I was lately thinking about this, how people were in the times of Jesus and how people are now. And it feels to me that at those times, so since there was no electromagnetic energy, there was no pesticides and all kinds of poisons, people must have been much more alive and more in the body and more in here. There was no television to put them to sleep, etc. So they could still somehow easier, at least those people who were more attuned to the heart, they could easier recognize Jesus, that he is somebody else, somebody different, and there is some heart. And nowadays, people are so much more poisoned and deafened and sick than 2000 years ago. So it's much more difficult, it seems, for people to still recognize Jesus or someone like Jesus here on earth.
Exactly.
Also because of the propaganda, the whole idea about things, how it should be.
And also they're not able anymore to recognize the relevance of it. I mean, it has no meaning anymore. Some people just might frown an eyebrow, but they go on running after money, power, sex. I mean, in a way, it's all telling that I was kicked out of the Sufi camp.
Yeah.
And that it's supposed to be a spiritual community.
Yeah, and exactly Sufis who are supposedly tolerating all religious paths, combining all those religions, tolerance to every religion, even paying tribute to all kinds of religions.
Dear. It's not about Jesus himself or a Jesus or a figure like me. These very few people are a manifestation of the heart itself. In people, in themselves. So do you want to be confronted with your own heart? Through Jesus or someone like me? And nowadays people seem to have a radical no to this question. Then again, they manipulate it away from their heart. If you're full of pain, then it's not so easy anymore to say yes, let alone a radical yes to the heart. If that means that you're confronted with all this pain that's in you. And the tendency is still to go more and more into stories, narratives, mind considerations, which take you away from this inner pain, and then also the inner knowing of what is true, what is love. One worrying, dangerous development in all this, what happens lately, is plan, I dare to call it by now, to separate man and woman. To make their love into a relic, something of the past, some story. Well, in fact, it's exactly the other way around. This love between man and woman is, I won't say the only thing that's no story, but it's so extremely real. And what they put instead of that, this is a story. They impose gender confusion upon people and even upon children. This is such a crime that I have no words for this. I feel tears now. This is a wholeheartedly fucking people up from the beginning. Not necessarily for good, because you can't kill the heart, but you'd have a bad start. It's not too complicated to manipulate children. All the less if parents are willing to cooperate unconsciously with this crime. Return to Jesus. You don't have to be a Christian for that, or even religious in the old sense of the word. We're just talking about return to the heart of man. It's one of the few I wrote many times about the huge resistance here on earth to man, which in the end is the same as the resistance to Jesus. Somehow the dark force manipulated us to believe that man is something totally different from someone like Jesus, from the heart. We are made to believe that the tough guys represent something of man. In my writings I call this the deluding female force that is very much operative, active in men as well as in women, everywhere. And if you're not basically willing to see through this very powerful deluding force, it will take us over. And unfortunately, there's no end to the misery that it will create until the point of death. Massive death. If you are basically not willing to see through this manipulative, dark, deluding force. Phew. Thunder and lightning will arrive. Where the heart meets the dark force. We had it many times. Suddenly out of the blue, lightning appeared. Sometimes even in the mist, the fog, a very thick fog, early morning. Suddenly a flash of lightning. This happened when the heart through me met the woman of the earth. These mysterious lightnings out of the blue appeared suddenly. Especially when we were in Poland somewhere. And it is like a flash. If the formless and the form meet, then something happens. Just before this recording started, we talked about a meeting that we had, or at least on a deeper level, with a woman who I had seen many, many times for years, passing by, but we never met in real. I mean, passing by my window, and I was inside. She came back from the city, or from wherever. There was only once this meeting, this flash. It worked immediately. She'd walked there with her boyfriend, which, as I see so many times, in case of these women who have a higher attunement to the heart of Jesus, naming it Jesus or whatever, doesn't matter here. Anyway, man, the man of the heart. Many times these women are with a very kind-hearted man, where they feel something of his heart. And even though usually they don't have much, if any, power to ever manifest this, so she will be inherently frustrated. Because it's huge work, I can tell, to manifest this heart on an earthly level. To really go in a deep process with the woman of the earth. With the earth itself, I can even say. This earth is one big form, manifestation of the formless heart. That forgot its source, its origin. And suddenly, when there's a remembrance of such an earthly woman, suddenly sees me, or Jesus. Suddenly this memory comes back in a flash. And this is exactly what happened on the corner of the street where I lived, when I was with Sadlova biking outside of the city, or in the direction of going out. Then she suddenly came around the corner with her boyfriend. And she was totally startled. She just stopped, looked at me, in this memory. Her boyfriend walked further, didn't know what was going on immediately. And I looked in return. And then we were startled for a moment. it's a flash of eternity, but in the normal earthly time it seems just some seconds. Maybe it lasted only 10 seconds or something that she stood there. But from the normal perspective it's already strange enough to just stop and start staring at someone. Even if you're, or all the more if you're with your boyfriend and you look at another man like that. Because she didn't look at a man. She recognized her own heart in me, which seemed to have been lost. And she was all the time, maybe from birth on, looking for this heart. And she could never find it. So sometimes she tried out a good-hearted man, which only made her more frustrated, because she thought by herself, now I am with such a good-hearted man and still I feel unfulfilled. How is this possible? There's a lot to say about that. Too much for one video. For one thing, these good-hearted men are deluded. And exactly by the female force, as I always call it. They cannot deal with women. They don't see her truly. They first need to go through a deep, deep process to really be able to meet the woman they do actually love. Because love is not a problem. But love is just a start. If you want to manifest this love on an earthly level. Man, if you have some heart left in this fucked up world, meet woman, see her, feel her, get to know all about her. Be in contact with her and be crushed again and again. Allowing this crushedness, being crushed consciously, gets you closer and closer to a woman. Makes you see her. There were more women who had this flash of recognition, something far beyond themselves. They just made them stop everything they do at the moment or think about, or even in this case of the girl being frustrated with her lover. Everything stops if you meet yourself in a form that seems to be man. That seems to be a man. That is man himself that you meet. That this earthly woman meet such a moment. And also very interesting is why is this possible that this woman has such a flash of recognition. Because before in my life it did not happen like that. The way should have been prepared. The way that makes this recognition possible. This recognition that is so of utter importance, all the more what happens today in the world. I even don't see any way how we can survive all this if there won't be a deeper recognition here on earth of the heart, a return to the heart, men and women, to fight the inhuman technology they want to impose on us. It's only the heart that can save us. Some people call it Jesus. I call it in principle the heart. It's a more neutral, you could say, but if someone like Jesus manifested his heart as no one before, I'm not against recognizing this. And surely as long as you could recognize in the same way that it can be manifested also in another man, or even in more, in principle. What I wanted to say is this: if one woman here on earth manages to recognize the Jesus in a man, the heart, the pure heart, then this heart starts to radiate into the earth. And this is exactly what happened with Svetlova in 2003 and 4. The explosion into my heart was in 2004, but we met in 2003. So this went extremely fast from the moment of meeting and the recognition, or let's say the explosion. Recognition happened before. The deepest recognition happens indeed 1 year later, after we met. And you must also see then, if I talk about this, the recognition, pure recognition, which means being purely absorbed in love for the divine man, the man of the heart, means this explosion is there, will be there. I would say unavoidable, if you totally allow it. The thing that is that no woman ever here on earth allowed this to happen. Partly, of course, because the man should be there to enable this. The love of the man should be there, who totally embraced the woman in his heart, which is not a little thing. Don't be confused here. If this response of man's heart to a woman here on earth, to our unconsciousness in recognizing the man, if this has been addressed, if man has addressed wholeheartedly and wholeheartedly the unconsciousness of woman, the woman of the earth, transcended it in his own heart, then in principle this recognition is possible. And coming back to what I said with the recognition that happened through Svetlova, if the woman of the heart has been enabled to recognize the man of the heart, only then the woman of the earth can, in principle, see the man of the heart. And this is very relevant. It's not for nothing that this woman of the earth who came around the corner was startled, stopped in everything she did. When she saw me, it was not for nothing that I drove and biked next to Svetlova. And that's what I referred to earlier. When I was without Svetlova earlier, then this recognition did not happen the same way. Even though on another level this recognition was there, and even always. But if there's this love of woman to man, and the recognition on consciousness level, which is very an important addition. If love and consciousness are together there, and it explodes in the heart, then something fundamental has happened here on earth. And also the very relevant in these current times, the counterforce which starts to stop this love of man and woman will start to become stronger. Or in fact I should say, because it was always that strong, it starts to manifest this strength more obviously. It gets nervous. It cannot stand this love between man and woman. and somewhere it feels it in the atmosphere. Something resonates, and they're triggered to even hurry up their nasty plans which they have with humanity, because they feel the heart is getting closer. Let's do it now instead of waiting for another 30 years. They could still bear it if only the woman of the heart and the man of the heart unite, which happened indeed. But what they cannot tolerate in the least is that love radiates to the woman of the earth. Because what does this mean? If the woman of the earth recognizes Jesus, the man of the heart, then let's call him the tough guy who doesn't respect the heart, who doesn't respect woman, but who wants to conquer her for his own power. And even to cover up his own fear. What happens to these guys is they're afraid they will be left alone. They'll lose their power, their financial imperium. Their plans will be obstructed. They're so afraid of the man of the heart that if I would openly, and I do that herewith, invite him for a duel, as we call it in Dutch. I'm not sure what's the English word for it. In the Middle Ages, sometimes you had this fights between two knights, for example, fighting about one woman. But this is much bigger than about one woman. This is about all humanity. The direction in which humanity goes here on Earth. I invite the guys at the top, who are the most rich, most powerful, thus, unfortunately, money means power nowadays, which is totally absurd, but it has come that far with humanity, that they bought this lie. I challenge them, I invite them to have a duel, this fight. And we will sit opposite each other without any tools, just our beings. So no EMFs are allowed to influence the fight. Yes, I'm sorry. It will be pure, your being against mine. That will be an honest meeting, honest confrontation. And we just look at each other. Ah! 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 Da! 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 Ah! Yeah. Da! 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 Sha! So! Da! Sia! Sa! Dra! Sa! Cha! Ra! Sha! Da! Ta! Pah! Pah! Yeah, there we go! There's the fucking lightning! You fuckers! Fuck you! I prepared for this fight for years. You fuckers! Ugh! You will fucking see who wins! You fucking dark monster! Look me in the eye!
Ha!
And then try to survive. Have the fucking guts to look me in the eye. And what I will tell you is this. Behind all your hate, you love me. And you know that. But you're so afraid to be vulnerable. To cry out all this pain that you store inside. That you inflict on others. Via all your nice inventions. Your nice technology. That's all pain being poured out over humanity. And even the whole world. Including all the animals. This is what you just saw. Is it our fight? What am I allowing out here? To get out of my body! That's your cramp. That you stored for millennia. You're supposed to hate. Your despair. Your lack of love. Your hopelessness in regard to being in true relationship with someone. With even one person. You see that it starts storming now. You know why this is? I do this. But you are deluded by assuming what is an I. This is not the thing that you see here. I am no one. I am your heart. Yeah. I'm flexible. I'm not angry. Anger out of love is something else. It really starts to storm. Children crying, but we will protect them against you. You have killed too many already, weakened so many, and you won't stop by yourself, because I know you. I came here down to earth to get to know you, so I can liberate you. And one of the things I learned is that the ego won't stop by itself. It cannot. It goes on and on and on, asking, please help me. If you don't help me, I go on with torturing you, destroying you, just until you say stop. It's all a reflection of your pain, your powerlessness. You need power to cover your powerlessness. You surely did your best to prevent the woman of the earth from meeting me. You fairly well managed, but not totally. You made a few mistakes here and there. Well, the woman I described earlier, after 10 seconds, her mind came back, and she thought she cannot stand there on the pavement. Everybody is seeing this woman standing there looking at another man, other than her beloved, or supposed beloved. So she started to make movements in the direction of her current lover, to go back to normal. But maybe she shouldn't have gone back to normal, because normal has never been normal. But we have come to believe, made to believe, what is normal. Certainly during the last 5, 6, 7 decades, but in a way even much longer. It's not normal. What is normal is the realization that heaven and earth are one. There's no difference. Okay, the manifestation is different. But originally, basically, there's no difference. But it's confusing if, as the woman of the earth, you feel in your heart still, you can never deny this, not truly at least, this love for the man of the heart. And you don't see it anywhere, reflected in a male body. Then you start believing that this love of your heart is not true. And you try to believe that the other side is true. That the normal miserable life is true. The life without the depth of love. The life of dealing with life, managing, maybe have a family, surviving, raising the next generation, that must be life. Life without love, true love, is no life. It's form. There's love between man and woman. This is so basic to a life. It is life. You must see that the one, life itself, manifests as two, as duality. And unfortunately, so far not many people see this. Nowadays it's very popular to try to overcome duality by all the time focusing on the one. This won't lead you anywhere except for more delusion. You must see that the one manifests as two, and you cannot avoid the two. They're basic to life. If you realize these two, the female and male, then we're getting somewhere. Then you might be able to understand what the one really is. You discover the one through the two, and not through the one. And it's so natural to allow this love to the other sex. Of course, the whole thing gets, let's say, crooked, illusory when you focus mainly on the lower parts. Sexual attraction, or being deluded by power, safety. Not denying this as part of reality, but you must see things for what they are. And if by that you deny the higher parts, then you won't get anywhere. Then you lead an empty life, the life of form, as many do. Even though everybody, resisting it or not, is somewhat looking for this depth of life that is missing when you are lost in the lower parts, lower spheres, levels of life. Going back to the meeting of the earthy woman and the man of the heart, there have been a few of these meetings in our process. They were always very intense. And usually it appeared that the meeting could not truly happen yet, at least not in a sustained way. There really was a meeting. But sooner or later the earthy woman, was deluded away from the heart, indicating that you could say it was too early, the meeting, but I don't want to say that, because the meeting has to happen again and again before something substantial can happen. Doesn't mean that when it seems to not succeed, when man and woman split up again, at least in the world of form, it doesn't mean there was no success. It only indicates the whole meeting of the man of the heart and the earthy woman, the meeting in which every sphere of life has been transcended into man's heart. It has not happened yet. But it doesn't mean that nothing happened. A lot happened. That's all leads to the next meeting. Every next meeting is a deepening of the earlier meeting. But there can be breaks in between, and there are. It's not so long ago we had, again, an intense meeting. This could have, in fact, be more intense, but at least showed how huge still the resistance of the woman of the earth is to man's heart. Another way of putting it is the fight between man's consciousness the fight over, if this is the English expression, over the woman of the earth, which has always been going on here on earth. Is still running, and I noticed already meditating this fight takes away part of my consciousness, because when I meditate, you're not tuning now to this subject of subjects. I meditate as unconsciousness in a woman that is there because of the men who are not really conscious, but who use all kinds of even technological means to fool a woman that they are conscious, that they have power. Well, they in fact have not any power. It's all substitutes, inhuman substitutes without heart. And when I meditate the woman of the earth, I meditate also they're being fooled by man, by man's consciousness that is in fact unconsciousness, but is fooling by presenting itself as being conscious. Through all kinds of means, lower means of the lower spheres of life that I just mentioned, that they know are attractive for a woman, for the woman of the earth. Which very basically is just money, power, sex. Safety, sex, and power. And so far it worked. Woman still associates herself with these spheres, identifies with these spheres. So if men, I have difficulty calling it man. I don't know, people call it man. So I try to adjust to your language. They still have easy play on woman by offering her the shit, inhuman shit. The meditation is fully active. Often when I meditate so intensely, I have a hard time finishing my sentences, as you notice. This unconscious force is so strong. So I have to work with flashes of consciousness. Also the title of my book, by the way, my books. I can feel always this resistance of one consciousness to be addressed by consciousness in my whole body. It's a serious, huge fight. Dat is too young. Because sleepiness is very much connected to this force of unconsciousness. Woman of the earth, you were always fooled by all these men, by their money, their power, their muscles, their dicks, their laughs, their humor. Just name it. They're not here with their heart. It's even worse, they try to get the heart through you, but you will never manage. It will always be an empty relationship. As I just said, it's not for nothing that a few women of the earth who have also a strong, at least intuitive, spiritual side, they are in principle more attracted to men with heart. Even though, as I said, if they enter that relationship, they still can be and will be unfulfilled. That's not the point. I've come here to wake you up, to show you your true love. And this is not about me. It's never about me here. I was never into self-obsession. This is not a point. This is not what it's all about. And if it's about your heart, where it really wants to go to, then it's not about you either. This fight is still going on. Of course, I won't manage in one session like this to address the whole thing. One of the things I like to know how strong this force of unconsciousness is, and that in principle, even though it will take you over again and again, if not all the time, basically you should not or you cannot surrender to it. Your beloved is consciousness, not unconsciousness. And that consciousness, as it is embedded in the heart, and that's a very relevant addition, because there are quite a few guys out there who have a stronger force of consciousness. But if it's about the heart, it doesn't impress me at all. This consciousness may be impressive, but if there's no heart in which this consciousness is embedded, then still the consciousness is empty. And it will even separate you. It will separate you from the earth. this consciousness overwhelms you, takes you over. You follow it, which happens a lot. Don't follow a man's consciousness if it's not embedded in his heart. Enjoy. One thing that happens, I may have talked about it before, is that this force of unconsciousness, dark force, kicks people out of the body. Everyone, but mostly people don't notice it. Unless you are more conscious already, like me. You feel this process goes on all the time. All the time it tries to kick you out, as I call it, push you out of the body, upward. And that's why you see me doing like this. To fight when you turn. Because here on the earthly level it needs to happen. This fight. And if not, it will win, the dark force. We need to fight consciously here on earth, and not in the dark. In the dark, the word says it. In the dark will win. In the light will win. We have to fight consciously. The dark cannot stand the light. So we must altogether keep exposing this dark force that's so relevant. Even if it doesn't seem to make much progress in the short run, it has effect. Even if 70-80% of the people seem to be asleep still, just go on exposing, shining light on the dark, go on and on and on. Even if there will be, unfortunately, casualties here and there in this fight, they are already there. So many people haven't let themselves be vaccinated by this dark force, what they call vaccinated. Which is just another tool, a big one, still, tool in their fight against the heart, fight against humanity. They love destruction, destroying. And if you don't wake up to this reality here on earth, at a certain point it will be too late. As I said before, the ego has no limits. It will go on until everything is destroyed. I don't say it will manage, because the other side is also there. And it is a fight, always already. But if you let it win too far, if you go too far, yeah, we'll have many casualties on the way. I mean, in the worst case, even just 20% of humanity would survive. Until finally some light shines through and acknowledges the fact that we can't go on like this. And then the dark force will be pushed down, or you cannot beat it forever. This is also one point that some people a bit naively suppose, understandably naively, but still, if you really go into this duality of life, which I dare to say as no one ever before here on earth, if you really go into the duality of life and they explode into one, that means you cannot see them all the better. And you can see also that there will never be a winner. This is an illusion to think that ever here on earth the light will win or the dark will win. This being in a fairy tale, in some childish fairy tale that is just not realistic. Having said this, doesn't mean we should do nothing. That's what I just said. If the dark gets too strong, it will do devastating, destructive work. And surely with the technological means of nowadays, destruction will be huge. We cannot tolerate this. Not if you have a heart and you have somewhere. In that sense, we must always be on the watch, even if the light starts to regain terrain again. You see it again and again after every war. To some extent, some more light gains terrain, comes back. Surely after the Second World War, it was so terrible, this Second World War, that we wanted to go the other side. We had a Nuremberg Code to not do experiments anymore on children, for example. And more things were dealt with that seemed to be more human, to not let this ever happen again. But in the meantime, this dark force all the time went on, and it prepared all the time for the next big battle. And in fact, the battle was already going on. Only it happened in the dark, and it deluded us to assume that everything was going all right. We had even more luxury than ever, more safety, and of course, people get more and more sleepy. In the past, people were not as sleepy as now. I saw even some time ago some recordings of, I think, interviews of the 50s. I was amazed. Wow, people were more awake then at the time. They were more present. People are so asleep nowadays. And I can talk a long time about this. Many things are involved in this respect. Surely one of the things is the EMFs that are rolled out over us nowadays. Which seems to be one of the 2 or 3 most dangerous technologies nowadays. Maybe the worst, next to nuclear power. Anyhow, which in a way is not so different, by the way. It's also radiation, but on a different frequency, different spectrum. And so now we reach the point, what is it, 76 years after the Second World War ended. 75, last year started already. There's an eruption of the next war, even though many people had no ideas still. And after 1 year, 1.5 years, still not, that there is a war going on. Because it takes such a different form than before we were used to. It's much less with actual weapons, cannons, just name it, bombs. They also use that still. I mean, they still kill people who speak up against the current narrative. And they killed, over the last 1.5 years, quite a few presidents here and there, which of course doesn't get attention in the mass media, because they're all part of the plan. In the past, this would be a big scandal, and one after the other president would be killed. Journalists would wonder, why is this so? What happens? For God's sake. Nowadays, it's only mentioned that for unknown reasons, or sudden heart failure, or even suicide or whatever, suddenly the guy was dead. I mean, anyone with some brains left, functioning brains nowadays, is of course not possible. No coincidence. So now they also keep killing people, actually, with guns or with new technology, not with radiation, with this new technology that they can kill someone with radiation in the heart, and the doctors, the guys who do autopsy, cannot even distinguish anymore hardly if it's really from a heart failure or from a weapon, from an EMF weapon, which is anyway not a focus. So But okay, this is a bit of a side thing now. But what is not a side thing is that this war is going on full power now, this moment, and it's erupted. Probably because indeed they could not wait anymore, their ego, with implementing the war in a visible way now, in a perceptible way. The plan seemed to have been to roll it out in 2050. But as I said, they could not wait, so they started now already. And this is one such an important thing, that people should wake up to the reality of war. We are in a war. If you don't see this, it's such an easy killing nowadays. Much easier than in the past. In the past, people were aware of the effect of the war. And most people have such a huge resistance to acknowledge this simple fact, that we're in a war, that there are bad guys at the top who really have not merciful plans for humanity. And I can imagine, I can understand this. It's so difficult to allow how bad it gets, how dark it gets. You will feel immediately very threatened, and your whole system has to deal with this. But you are threatened. You are not safe. It's just an illusion that you live in a safe world. As I said, we have been lulled to sleep, but we survived so far. And at least in the Western world, there seem to be no big threats. If you live in other parts of the world, this is a totally different story. It seems people here were not so concerned about people in other parts of the world. And naturally it's here. And people here are so asleep that they have such a hard time waking up. This is real true, what happens here. Yes, it's true. It happens here, right now, also in the West. Even mainly in the West this moment. It gets very bad here. They're in such a fucking hurry with rolling out their plans. And they... Why do they manage? Because all these people are asleep. They just try all the time things, the next measurement, the next stupidity, and they just see what's people's reactions. It's all part of the plan to monitor people's reactions. And you see it again and again. If the protests get too big, too many especially, they back up a bit. They say, okay, this goes a bit too far. And they wait just. Then the next country starts with the same. Or some scientist speaks up. In fact, it was not such a bad idea and we must take it seriously. And then they just go back. They crawl back with their slimy cunt energy. They go back to the same plan. They just wait a few weeks or months and they come back to it. It's all in their scriptures. When you must see all these patterns, you must no longer be fooled by it. One thing that's so bad in all this is hope. You should not have hope anymore, else you cannot fight freely. People can only fight freely if they have no hope. And all the time, because they know this, they give you hope again. After 1 week or after 1 month or after a year, it will all be over. It is not over. They're just starting. Don't you see this? It won't be over. Say bye to your hope. The life as you knew it is over. Unless we fight all together against this, whatever you want to call it, the cabal, the elite, the technocrats, the Illuminati. There are more and more names for it nowadays. They're extremely powerful, so we must see how big and powerful our enemy is and not let ourselves be discouraged. Okay, in moments we feel bad about it and we feel hopeless, and then we stand up, we crawl back to our feet, and we fight again. We unite, come together, and because alone, indeed, it's hopeless. Hopeless. We fight without hope. It's from our heart, anyway. We'll see how far we get. And if we really unite in our hearts together, they won't win in the end. No matter their big advantage, technological advance on us. Their power needs to be sustained by the masses. If this stops, their power stops. Then it's over. Game over. Before I finish, I still like to come back to the love of man and woman, because this is the core. We should not let this be destroyed. We should not be deluded that it's about other things. And surely not be deluded by all kinds of gender shit that they pour over us these days. This is such obvious stupidity, such a radical anti-nature, that if it wasn't so sad and many people go along with it, and we could just all together laugh about it. But okay, we also must fight that stupidity. It's just one of the many, many crimes, anti-nature crimes they pour over us these days, these years. So at the same time, we should not only fight, but also keep loving. Be aware that there's love between man and woman. This really gives us force. And we need this force to fight back. We fight out of love, not out of hate. But still we must fight. This love includes fighting, if necessary. Not because we like it, but it's part of the nature of love to not let itself be killed here on earth. So I'm sure I will come back later to the love of men and women and how this all functions, because I see not many people are conscious of how deep this goes, the love and fight between men and women. You must know both sides. I just talked about love, but there's also between man and woman, there's a huge fight going on. If you don't address this sooner or later, then this love that I just talked about, that should fight and deliver us the force by which we can fight the elite, then it won't in the end manage. But okay, that's for a later session. For now, as I sometimes say, samyama, whatever that means. Let's just add this, because I love it just shared. Wow, the old thunder is gone. There's now almost clear blue sky. There's a few clouds here and there. White clouds. So it's remarkable. But sometimes this fight, including thunder and lightning, must happen, manifest. in the beginning in the beginning of when we had these deep processes with man and woman, and also this thunder and lightning manifested suddenly, I was still open for the possibility that it was a coincidence, although intuitively I already felt that would be strange. But after so many of these experiences, I can just tell you openly that it's not a coincidence. Things in the atmosphere are related to what happens here on Earth. As I said somewhere during the session, heaven and earth are fundamentally not separate. So what happens here on Earth has consequences. And the other way around. So keep this in mind.
Before you started the movie, we started recording, there was also blue sky, or few little clouds.
Yep.
Children went outside to pick up some plums from the plum tree, and while they were outside, and you were challenging the light, suddenly this thunders came, and they came home running. Saya was crying, because she got scared of the thunder and the dark sky. And then afterwards it's now again a blue clear sky. It's quite remarkable, really.
Yes. By normal logic this cannot be understood. Yeah, what is normal logic? The logic we learned here is not normal. The whole education system is also crooked here on Earth. They teach us what they want us to believe. It's all part of the same crime. There's no end to it. If you really enter this subject, if you inform yourself more and more, there's no end to being shocked about the depth of the crime they put on us, impose on us. It's so good that more and more people wake up to this, really. This will have its consequences, really. I hope we're still in time to fight back. And the last word has not been said about this. I will do my part, that's for sure. Satlova also. In fact, we're one, so if I do it, then she also does it the other way around. I think even that might already be going on. If people wake up to the reality here on Earth, which is not the same as the depth of awakening to the truth. Maybe talk about the truth on Earth, but that's a good beginning, I must say. A very relevant beginning. If in relationships, one partner of the two wakes up and the other one has too much resistance to it, I never give advice, but I just say that the chance that you will stay together is not big. And if you still would stay together, then it's more your ego who tries to still make the best of it. Because you find each other, man and woman, for a great part, and in the end, totally on consonance level. But then again, as I said in the first session, consonance as it is embedded in the heart, or else it's get more complicated. Talk about pure consonance. So if you cannot find there and you meet each other still on, for example, sexual level, this is a hell. I know a couple who is with each other only on the basis of sexual level. This is a constant fight, constant. But I cannot even call it making up after the fight and have sex again. It's not making up, it's just, in some energetic dream together, some energetic eternal fight. which includes sexuality. It goes too far to go into more detail, but I still want to add this, because what happens nowadays, the last 1.5 years, when this war manifests suddenly, so clearly to the ones who are open to that, to see that, this has also its consequences for men and women who are challenged in our love for each other. How is this in you? Do you in fact love the dark, or you love the light? What do you love in your partner? What is it actually? This is very good to find out, and not just on mind level, but of course on whole hearted, whole bodily level. Challenging times. And if you manage with a lot of us to survive, I'm sure this will be one consequence of it, and I guess so, that it will lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves, what is true, and also to understanding of our attraction to the other sex. It will change in quite some people. Because as I just showed in the previous session, as long as in a woman true love is not clear, as long as she has not clarity in all the spheres of life, she can be easily, or however, manipulated. You could say by man, but in a way she is deluded by her own deluding force that she projects on man. And what he offers her is part of herself. And he just makes use of the opportunity, and it goes in her because there's an opening to being deluded. This opening is in fact a cramp. It's a bit paradoxical. If this cramp will be opened, will be released of its pain, then basically woman cannot be deluded, and at least in that sphere no longer. And her interests, also sexual interest in certain type of men, will change, that's for sure. Because your sexual interest in a certain type of man, if I could call it like that, there's much variation in it, of course, because consciousness is very different in man, and also the manifestation of his heart is so extremely different in man. This will have its consequences for your attraction. You cannot control that, of course. You cannot control who you are attracted to, even though the ego tries to. But that's the big subject in itself. I see so many people so unhappy in their relationship, and still the ego tries to hold on to controlling yourself, who you are attracted to, because you want it to be like this. Often it's related to feeling safe, or safety is I think the biggest deluder here, surely for women. And there's also a huge deluding force going on of herself in woman, to not want to accept who your true love is, to resist the man of the heart. This is so huge that you have no idea yet, because you never went really into yourself to discover all this, how this functions. So you just in the dark are here and there attracted, and you think this is normal. You have no idea what this is all about. You think it's your choice for a certain type of man. Now it's your ego's choice. Unless you're totally free, then talk about different things. Of course, there's a big difference in women. I don't say everyone is so totally unfree, but you are somewhere on the the scale, on the continuum of free and unfree. And your attraction to man is totally part of this whole struggle, where you are in this respect of freedom and unfreedom. You can only be free, I still want to add this really, you are totally free woman if you can be totally in love without any resistance, totally in love with the man of the heart. That's your final stage, which is no stage anymore, but your total freedom. I don't say it has to be me, because there is no me. That's just heart. Any man form in which this heart manifests is your beloved. I can tell you this now already, but you won't believe me yet, because you're still somewhere in this struggle. I saw that in you. It's not my mind. It's not anything in me that makes this up. I saw it in you. And why? Because I totally love you. That's why, as I sometimes formulated it, went into you. It's not the right term. As people associate going into a woman with something else, because they are deluded by form. If this love of man for a woman is total, then you start seeing her with all the dramas and fights included. Okay, that's part of the whole thing. But then you also start to see not only the dramas, also beyond it, what is a true love, what is a true call of her heart. And once a man sees this, first he just cry for a year or something, or however long it takes in your case. If only for the fact that this is so far from reality here on earth, the manifestation of a true call, a true longing. And as men you feel like naturally responding to that. You cannot else but do that. And you see what a huge struggle this will be, and yes, and how far it is still is from manifesting. That's why I said first you will cry for I don't know how long, maybe years, depending how far you are. And anyway, from the moment you really see a woman, you can only respond to this deepest call of her heart. And you're not deluded anymore by the egoic wishes that flip out one after the other, and including her jealousy. That's all manipulation of man. Which is the strongest force through woman, by the way. I didn't mean to suggest that you should take it lightly. Not at all. Not in the least. On the contrary. If as man you can deal with jealousy in woman, then we're getting somewhere. Really. That means the man in you is manifesting. Woman is not attached to this jealousy in the end. It seems so. It's just a huge manipulative force that tries to get her hand on man, to manipulate him, to get him to herself, to be able to manipulate him to her egoic wishes. But in the end, which woman does want to stay stuck in this jealousy? It's a big prison. Your heart doesn't want this, to stay stuck there. And you cannot help but love the man who can take you beyond that. Do you have caca, Saya? Yeah? Does she have? I think about my daughter saying that she has caca, which means in Polish shit. She's such a sweetie. If only for that reason we should not tolerate the elite, the cabal, to take us over. If only for the children. For the heart of a child. Being touched by this open child. I forgot what I was saying. And man, see the ego in yourself. If so, you can deal with the ego in woman, which is absolutely necessary if love wants to truly manifest here on earth. See, for example, the female ego wants to compete with other men for her. This is not you. You're not a competitor in that sense. But you're so easy in taking over the female deluding ego that you have come to identify with it. And you lost the man in yourself. You can't find it again. And that's where we are now, here on earth. Man is lost, overwhelmed by the female ego, which, to make it more clear, does not come from women, especially it's also from men. It's just everywhere. It's just all the earth as a female sphere, all over, around itself. And if as men you are born in this egoic sphere, you cannot help this, and it's not at all wrong or something. Everybody is born in this, men and women alike. But if man needs to be born here on earth and is supposed to rule from his heart, they must see this in yourself, how you were deluded by this female egoic force. Clear yourself thoroughly, and then indeed see it everywhere around you also, because you cannot see it if it's not clear in yourself. This must be clear in yourself, this principle. And if you're clear in yourself, women will be attracted to you, who somewhere recognizes this clarity, this clearness, this, in the best case, in the deepest place, purity of heart, of man. And this will have such an influence on the earth, on what's going on here. I mean, by the sheer way of radiance, whatever you manage to realize with a woman will have its radiance, its consequence. For this earthly sphere. It's the depth that influences the more narrow levels, the more superficial levels. So if you realize something with your partner in depth, this has its consequence in a good way, you could say. In a good way from the heart's perspective. The more you are, the deeper you are one with your beloved. The deeper this radiance will be there. If only as a necessary counterforce to the always active dark force that wants to separate man and woman and anyone, everything on its way, fragmentalize everything, everyone, into the many, many parts, as many as possible. There's always this fight here on earth between being fragmented and the adhesive force that wants to stay together as one whole. All these things should be seen in yourself, in your process of, call it meditation, or at least observing yourself, how a human being functions, and what's a better place than in yourself to observe this. If it functions in you as that, it will also function in another human being like that, and some 7 or 8 other billion people. Checking the weather. If you get some storm again. What I meant earlier by being flexible. This is possible if you're free. You can go to suddenly from being sad to smiling to becoming angry, frustrated, whatever, indignant, because you're free. Joy. The joy of the heart. There's only true joy, to which you always can return, which is something very different than egoic joy, of course. Or conditioned joy. It's pure joy. Joy of nature. Flexibility. Something very useful also in the current situation of the world. In our response to the attack on our humanity, the attack on our heart, attack on our children, have we been deluded? Acknowledging the fact that different groups of people suddenly come together, find each other without having ever expected that they would appreciate or even like people of such another group. I thought we were so different. This is an indication of that somewhere we were deluded to attach ourselves to a certain belief system, especially. People are very attached to beliefs, to ideas. Our reality becomes bigger than these ideas. Suddenly we like people that we didn't like, or the other way around. We thought, what was I doing with such a person? If he or she reacts the way he or she does at the moment. Delusion, the deluding force is big here on Earth. Only the heart can do something about this. Not even consciousness as such. As I said earlier, if consciousness is not embedded in the heart, it will misuse its power for itself, for its hidden dark goals. And consciousness has a big power. Okay, the fight will be continued. Not because I like it, because I'm here. And I won't tolerate what's going on now. I just won't. Bodies can die, but the heart cannot die. You cannot kill it. Even if they try to kill a few people with more heart. That's an easy peasy thing. But they can't kill the heart, it will manifest in other bodies. In Dutch we call it dweilen met de kraan open. Not sure about the English expression here. If you realize the heart, you realize that this heart can't be killed. And that makes it free to fight. There's nothing to lose. Fight for love. Fight for justice. Fight for freedom. Samuel.